After underestimating a black street mechanic, a Ferrari reveals her incredible hidden talent. Malik stood in the bustling garage, grease-caked hands trembling as he stared at the dazzling red Ferrari that had rolled through the door. The contrast was stark. Here he was, surrounded by tools and cardboard floors, while the car gleamed like a jewel, its existence a promise of speed and luxury, yet so far removed from his reality. An undercurrent of doubt washed over him as the businessman leaned nonchalantly against the car, his condescending smirk throwing shadows over Malik's sharp instincts. "Just make sure you don't scratch her," the man barked, as if addressing a disobedient child. Each word was a reminder of everything Malik felt he had to overcome. Malik's heart raced, caught between pride and the sting of judgment. His hands curled into fists, nails biting into his palms as he flipped open the Ferrari's hood. He remembered his grandfather's voice echoing through his mind, "Son, craft is about seeing what others can't." And suddenly, Malik made a vow to uncover what this car had hidden, the potential that was brushed aside by its driver. But as he examined the engine, the sharp whir of machinery filled the garage, and so did the weight of his insecurities. He was no stranger to the skeptical gazes from those who walked past his shop, dismissing his passion for cars as mere labor instead of art. As he tweaked the engine, tension crept in like a storm cloud. The owner's frequent check-ins pulled at Malik's concentration, their conversations laced with skepticism. "How long is this gonna take?" A casual inquiry turned burning. Each encounter peeled back layers of Malik's resolve. The businessman's presence was a reminder of the societal rift that often left him feeling like an outsider in an industry that should be his home. The pressure within him melded with the oil and metal, each thickening moment taunting his skill and all those years in his family's name. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Completing this project could shift not just the perceptions of others but the narrative he had worn like a cloak of shame. Yet, an unshakable fear clawed at him. What if he was simply not enough? With each bolt he tightened, anticipation twisted in his chest, each adjustment revealing more than just the car's mechanics. Days morphed into a countdown, the upcoming race loomed like an unyielding specter, and his personal stakes grew. Would the crowd witness what he could do, or would he remain just another overlooked craftsman? Every part of him screamed to pull out, to back down, to succumb to doubt. Could he truly embody the legacy of his lineage and defy the limitations others had cast upon him? Just days away, all he could focus on was the sound of that revving engine, a heartbeat of something much larger than metal and gears, but if he failed, it would only echo his deepest fears. Malik gripped the wrench tightly, letting the weight of his doubt collide with the growing fire of determination. Could this be his moment? Or would he once again be dismissed? The answer felt as unreachable as the speed he hoped to unleash. Malik nodded, focusing his mind as he raised his eyes from the engine to the businessmen standing nearby. Each scowl and scrutinizing glance felt like a challenge, daring him to slip up. But this time, he wasn't just a mechanic, he was a creator, an artist in the depths of transformation. He took a deep breath, the scent of oil mixed with burning rubber grounding him in the present. His fingers danced over the intricacies of the Ferrari's mechanics, their familiar contours igniting long-buried memories. As a child, he used to dismantle old car engines in the backyard, believing he was unlocking mysteries rather than breaking things down. The chaotic joy of those afternoons surged back, now layered with the wisdom of experience. His past wasn't an anchor, it was a launchpad. Malik paused, struck by a realization. Maligning the past only stunted growth. If he embraced it, perhaps he could elevate his craft beyond what he believed possible. The upcoming race represented more than a monetary win, it was a chance to reclaim his narrative. Each rotation of the wrench became a declaration of intent. As he meticulously reassembled parts, a rhythm developed like composing music or painting a masterpiece. The sharp clang of metal echoed his pulse, quickened by adrenaline, each sound both a warning and a promise. Days turned into a blur of grit and energy. He worked relentlessly, often late into the night, consumed by the desire to transcend expectations. With every challenge encountered failing bolts, stubborn technical issues, a flicker of self-doubt would surface, but he countered it with purpose. Hours spent knuckling under the car taught him resilience amid frustration. With the project nearing completion, he sensed a shift in the air, a subtle yet tangible change in his confidence. Other mechanics wandered over, curiosity piqued by the sight of a Ferrari in his modest shop. Their eyebrows often raised, half impressed, half judgmental, ignited a spark deeper than he anticipated, intensifying his focus. He no longer felt like an interloper in their realm, instead, he was sculpting his place in the industry. But when he overheard the businessman bragging about his wealth and connections at the local coffee shop, it stirred resentment. Malik questioned his worth, the lingering shadows of inferiority creeping back. What was the Ferrari to a man whose hands had never known oil? He clenched his fists, anger bubbling at the thought that his skill could never be equated with superficial success. This race wasn't merely about speed. In an underhanded way, it became a contest of dignity. As race day approached, the entire dynamic shifted. Malik stared at the Ferrari, no longer daunted but invigorated. He envisioned the roaring engines and the crowd holding their breaths as much for him as for the machines they idolized. The night before the race, staring at the starry sky through the shop roof, doubt once again flirted with him, the thought that failure would perpetuate the cycle of insignificance. But in the silence, a resolve crystallized. Whether victory or defeat awaited him, he would claim his story. As the sun rose on race day, the weight of expectation didn't crush him but exhilarated him. Striding towards the track, he spotted the businessman chatting with onlookers, a smirk hovering on his lips, a condescending glimmer in his eye. Malik's heart raced as he approached his car. Today, he wouldn't just race, he would show everyone that talent ran deeper than appearances. The moment of truth was fast approaching, all that lay ahead was a test of his conviction. As he climbed into the driver's seat, 1,000 thoughts swirled. It was about to become a confrontation, one that would redefine who he was. Would he rise from the ashes of others' expectations, or would he succumb to the weight of the labels affixed to him? What if the race wasn't just about speed? What if it transformed his very identity? Adrenaline surged through him as the engines began to rev, and with it, the resolve to confront everything he despised. And just before the signal was set to change, he glimpsed the businessman watching him, the smirk still in place. This was the moment where everything would pivot. The starting signal pierced the air, a sharp sound that cut through Malik's racing thoughts and propelled him into motion. The raw power of the Ferrari surged beneath him, an extension of his own will. As he accelerated off the line, the world around him narrowed to the track ahead, the vibrant hues of the crowd blending into a singular focus. The hum of engines enveloped him, a familiar and exhilarating cacophony that fueled his drive. But the intoxicating surge of speed could not drown out the mental battle, a relentless whisper that pricked at his consciousness. The businessman's mocking expression flashed before him. Malik wrestled with the weight of expectation again, but this time, he reframed it. He wasn't racing to impress, he was racing to define himself, to show that mastery came with hands-on experience, not merely the glimmer of a bank account. Each corner of the track was a test not just of the car's limits but of his own resolve. He navigated turns with a finesse that surprised even him, the car seemingly anticipating his every command. He had unlocked a symbiosis between man and machine, a dance birthed from countless hours spent honing his craft. The thought made him smile. This wasn't just a test of speed, it was an exhibition of dedication and evolution. As he flew past the first lap, adrenaline pumping, he caught sight of the businessman in the stands, his earlier confidence now replaced with concern. Each passing lap fueled Malik's resolve. He was not just outpacing rivals but also overcoming the possible defeat that had once haunted him. With each rotation of tires, he was rewriting his narrative, transforming doubt into unwavering conviction. However, the race wasn't without its specters. Malik struggled with burgeoning memories of failure, those moments spent watching teams that underestimated him, dismissing his insights as mere mechanic chatter. He recalled the judgmental side glances thrown by fellow mechanics, only half interested in what a street-savvy mechanic could offer. But in this moment, as he maneuvered the racing machine with precision, those memories began to transform. They served not as haunting shadows but as reminders of his resilience. Each past slight became a stepping stone, elevating him further. The final lap approached, and as the checkered flag loomed on the horizon, he felt the shift in the energy of the crowd. There was a weighty crescendo of anticipation, underscoring a connection that suffused the air. His heart raced not just for the victory, but for the recognition that would follow. Would they now see the skill behind the grease stain? Would this elevate him from the periphery into the spotlight he had long craved? And then, in the electric tension of that last turn, an unexpected obstacle materialized. A car skidded out of control ahead, the driver's frantic movements a chaotic spectacle that challenged Malik's calculated focus. The instinct to swerve kicked in, but Malik resisted the impulse. There was a razor-thin line between aggression and control. He grounded himself, recalling every lesson learned, every moment spent nurturing his abilities. In the blink of an eye, decisions cascaded within him. He executed a risky maneuver, threading through the chaos with audacity. The crowd gasped, the sound a palpable wave enveloping him. Timing was life, missing the target meant failure, but he had remapped fear into courage. As the finish line approached like a beacon, he clung to the thrill of possibility. This race could be more than just a victory, it might culminate in a revolution of identity, where perception met reality head-on. He crossed the line, the roar of the engine echoing the sound of triumph. But as the adrenaline surged and the chaos settled, he realized that the real race was just beginning. The moment of victory held only a shadow of what was to come. The businessman's smirk would undoubtedly morph into something more formidable. Malik felt the anticipation swell not just for the applause but for the confrontation that lay ahead. How would the world react to his triumph, and could he hold on to his new identity amid the shifting tides of recognition and scrutiny? The answers were out there, swirling just beyond the horizon, tantalizingly out of reach. As the roar of the crowd faded into the ambient sounds of the post-race excitement, Malik stepped out of the Ferrari, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. His hands trembled, not just from the rush of the race but from the profound realization of what he had accomplished. He had defied the odds, but standing on the precipice of victory, he felt the weight of the choice that lay ahead. The businessman's earlier derision came rushing back. Malik knew the applauses would soon morph into whispers of skepticism, and the flickering lights of excitement over his victory could easily be dimmed by a fraction of doubt from those who had always underestimated him. This was only the beginning of a deeper challenge, the necessity to cement his worth beyond the track. As he made his way to the pit area, he was bombarded by questions and eager reporters, all clamoring for his story, his thoughts. In that moment, something in him shifted. He could no longer afford to remain a mere bystander in conversations about identity and recognition. He had to take charge of his narrative. He stood taller, focusing on the cameras, allowing the gravity of his experience to fill his voice. The questions rolled in about the race, the danger of the last lap, but they also nudged closer to his background, his path. Malik found himself drawing purpose from his narrative. With each answer, he wove in snippets of his journey, the struggles that came before, the years of hard work and self-doubt, the instances where he fought for acknowledgement in a field that frequently dismissed him. He saw the flicker of interest in their eyes, perhaps the walls of preconception were beginning to crumble. But amid this emerging recognition, something gnawed at him. Had he merely traded one set of expectations for another? A flicker of apprehension crossed his mind. The spotlight shone brightly, but what lingered in the shadows? The fear of falling back into obscurity, of being labeled just another fleeting success story, was palpable. Hours later, as he retreated to his garage, the place that had been his sanctuary and battleground, he was struck by the calmness that enveloped him. Surrounded by cars, engines, and tools that had witnessed his evolution, he felt an unexpected clarity. He needed to build on this momentum, not just to assert his worth but to cultivate a legacy. He grabbed a notebook and jotted down plans to explore his craft, delving deeper into engine modifications, design innovation, something more than racing that could challenge the mechanical norms he had once been sidelined from. The shock waves of his victory had unveiled something greater than he anticipated. A broader vision grew within him, perhaps mentorship for young mechanics, a workshop that offered hands-on experience coupled with competitive spirit. Creating a platform that recognized talent beyond the glittering surface felt like the antidote to the mainstream narrative he had battled against. But just as he began to take solace in this newfound ambition, a sudden message flashed on his phone, a notification that sent a surge of anxiety rippling through him. The businessman he had raced against had asked for a meeting, a chance to discuss future opportunities. The invitation brimmed with layers of implication, and Malik knew he couldn't ignore the potential it held. Could seizing this chance mean entering a partnership that would catapult his career but also challenge his newfound identity? The thought left him anxious yet invigorated. It was an intricate dance between collaboration and compromise. He closed his notebook, an unsettled determination filling the space. The world had shifted, but could he navigate the waters of recognition without losing himself again? The threshold of his journey now presented a crossroads. One path led to collaboration, the other to independence. Malik took a deep breath, feeling the familiar buzz of engines in the background. Would he confront the businessman and explore this collaboration, or would he stand firm and carve his own route? Each decision weighed heavily, and the next move promised a confrontation with everything he had come to embody. The stakes were rising, and Malik realized, the real race was not just about speed and skill but the pursuit of an authentic, uncompromising legacy. The moment had come to face the architect of his doubts and redefine the race on his terms. But would he be able to maintain his newfound direction amid the shifting shadows of external pressures? As Malik paced the solitary zone of his garage, the hum of engines faded into an echo of contemplation. Each footstep thudded against the concrete floor, reverberating through the vessel of his dreams and fears. The businessman's meeting loomed in the back of his mind, a shadow silently pressing against his resolve. What if he kept his distance, holding fiercely onto his ideals? Conversely, what if he accepted the invitation, risking everything for a glimpse of stability and recognition? The choice gnawed at him. The thrill of the race had ignited something profound within him, igniting plans for the future that extended far beyond the roar of engines and the scent of burning rubber. He recalled the moment he began championing a broader vision, not merely racing but nurturing talent, instilling the same passion and purpose he had once fought to carve space for. His fingers grazed the edges of the notebook filled with sketches and ideas, the ink crackling with promise. The prospect of mentorship was exhilarating. It offered a deeper connection to his craft and a chance to redefine what success meant to him. He envisioned a workshop where aspiring mechanics transformed engines and dreams alike, their fingers smeared with grease while their hearts raced at the possibilities before them. Yet, as the plan solidified in his thoughts, uncertainty crept back in. What if the businessman had the resources to propel his vision? The allure of partnership sparkled, begging him to consider the partnership as a launching pad rather than a shackle. But would it require a trade-off of his autonomy, the very essence he wished to assert? He already felt the harsh gravity of expectation, the fight against which had brought him this far. Taking a moment, Malik leaned against a tool bench, inhaling deeply and allowing the smell of oil and metal to ground him. He closed his eyes, filtering through memories his childhood, the laughter of peer mechanics who disparaged him, the relentless hours spent studying blueprints, and that first solitary victory on the track. Recurring flashes of self-doubt spiraled through his mind, but beneath them, a resilient ember pulsed, a fire forged in sweat, grit, and defiance. It became clearer that his self-worth could not simply rise or fall based on external validation. The decision to meet the businessman was less about the man himself and more about what it would represent. Could it serve as a bridge to his aspirations, or might it become a barrier hindering his authenticity? This intersection of ambition and identity demanded his full attention. Determined, he picked up the notebook once more, flipping through the pages until he settled on a blank sheet. He started drafting potential questions for the meeting, testing their weight against his ideals. How could he articulate his vision while outlining boundaries that preserved his sense of self? As he scribbled, a new notion crept in: what questions would he demand of the businessman? Malik envisioned the man he faced, the sharp suits paired with sharp eyes. Could Malik facilitate a dialogue that shifted the power? Perhaps understanding the businessman's motivations would be key to revealing opportunities hidden within potential compromises. With a fresh wave of resolve, Malik set the notebook aside, feeling the walls of his sanctuary close in around him. The noise of external expectations threatened to drown him, but rather than pulling him down, it propelled him forward. The pressure, like the pull of gravity, balanced on the razor's edge of uncertainty and potential. The scheduled appointment loomed like a race car at the starting line, waiting for a signal. He was ready to shift gears. Would this encounter serve as the launch pad to refine his identity, or would it drown him in the weight of expectations he had fought so hard to escape? In that moment, whether stepping into shadows or blazing new trails, he realized one undeniable truth: the only finish line he sought to cross was his own. The idea that sustained him was deceptively simple. If the chance was given to him, he could redefine the game. With the day of reckoning fast approaching, would he seize the chance to assert his narrative, or would he find himself trapped in someone else's story? The stakes were higher than ever, and Malik stood poised at the fringe of a pivotal transformation. Malik stepped away from the solitude of his garage and took a long breath, the world outside buzzing with life. A hybrid hum of engines and voices echoed from the streets, a stark reminder of the duality of his existence. He was both the mechanic who dwelled in grease and grit, and the budding entrepreneur who dreamt of something more than just a toolbox and a wrenched knuckle. As he made his way to the meeting, each step felt heavier, laden with the gravity of what was to come. His mind raced through the potential scenarios: what the businessman would say, the deals he might propose, the sway of persuasive words wrapped in tailored suits. Would he even understand Malik's vision? Would he look down upon him, seeing only a street mechanic, rather than the architect of dreams he aspired to be? Navigating through the thrumming chaos of the city, Malik caught glimpses of his reflection in storefront windows, an image of resolve wrapped in uncertainty. He straightened his posture, reasserting the conviction he had pieced together in the safety of his garage. As every intersection came into focus, he mentally extinguished the flashes of self-doubt that sought to derail him. He would meet this man not with timidity, but with conviction. When he entered the plush office of the businessman, the atmosphere shifted from frenetic chaos to sterile calm, enveloped in a world Malik had only brushed against. Polished surfaces gleamed, and the scent of expensive cologne hung heavy in the air, making him acutely aware of the ocean of status that separated them. Malik, the businessman greeted with a measured smile, gesturing to a seat. "I've heard good things about your work." "Thank you," Malik replied, hiding the tremor in his voice beneath an exterior of confidence. He steadied himself, grounding his thoughts as they settled on the ethos he wanted to convey. As they discussed, Malik found himself shifting subtly from passive participant to assertive speaker. He laid out his ideas for the workshop, detailing the passion that ignited within him whenever he worked alongside budding mechanics. With every word, he felt the weight of his experiences overflowing into the room, his struggles, victories, and visions. He articulated not simply a business plan but an ethos, the commitment to elevate others alongside himself. The businessman's expression shifted, intrigue replacing indifference. "And how do you envision funding this workshop?" he asked, his tone suggesting doubt mingled with curiosity. The question hung in the air, palpable. Malik felt the gravity of that moment. Here was his chance to confront the specter of trade-offs he had feared. "I would rather build it with limited funds and integrity than accept an open check that demands my soul," he stated firmly. Their eyes locked, and in that instant, Malik realized that this meeting transcended a negotiation, it was a confrontation with the very essence of his ambition. The businessman had presented an opportunity, but Malik was resolute that it would not come at the cost of his identity. "Let us not dismiss the potential here," Malik continued, feeling the adrenaline surge as he pushed back against the norms of hierarchical power. "The right resources could amplify our vision, but it cannot come at the sacrifice of passion or purpose. There was a pause, and for just a moment, Malik saw the glint of respect flicker in the businessman's gaze. Perhaps, in confronting that looming figure, he had discovered something invaluable within himself, a hidden talent for negotiation, for standing tall against the odds. As the meeting drew to a close, Malik was filled with a newfound resolve. Perhaps he had begun to turn the tides, transforming not just his prospects but also his self-perception from a mechanic to a leader. The businessman's next words could be revelatory or a blunt reminder of the uphill battle that lay ahead. "Let us explore this further," the businessman said slowly. "We might have some common ground after all." Malik's heart raced with a cocktail of hope and trepidation. The tension from the exchange lingered in the air, each man now standing on the precipice of their own transformation, both wary yet willing to discover the territory that lay ahead. Would this newfound alliance propel Malik's ambitions, or trap him into a reality of unfulfilled promises? The moment had shifted, yet uncertainty loomed just as bold, casting long shadows over the future Malik dared to imagine. Malik stepped out of the businessman's office, the imposing glass facade reflecting not just the clouds overhead, but also the mix of exhilaration and anxiety coursing through him. He navigated the city streets again, each sound a car horn, chatter from bustling cafes was amplified under the weight of possibility. The conversation had ignited something within him. Yet, doubt pricked at the edges of his enthusiasm. What if the businessman's interest was merely superficial? What if they could not align their visions after all? Everything hinged on the next steps they would take together, and Malik knew uncertainty had a way of creeping back in when one least expected it. Determined to maintain his momentum, Malik decided to refocus. He returned to his garage, his haven, where the hum of machines would drown out the lingering echo of the boardroom discussions. The chaotic mixture of tools, oil stains, and half-finished projects was a stark contrast to the polished office. It felt grounding. Here, he was king of his domain, the master of each bolt and engine. As he cleaned up the garage, he reflected on what had transpired. He had held his own in a space dominated by power suits and polished shoes. That realization alone marked a significant step in his transformation. He was no longer just fixing engines, but envisioning a functioning workshop that inspired others. His personal journey was intertwined with that of others, a community of mechanics awakening to their potential. Equipped with clarity, Malik realized he needed a solid plan moving forward. This wasn't merely about seeking investments, it was about building something authentic that reflected his values. He brainstormed a proposal that captured his mission. Not just a workshop, but a mentorship program that could train and uplift the next generation of mechanics, providing practical skills and life lessons. Soon, he found himself sketching out the proposal late into the night, fueled by a mix of dread and hope. The more he wrote, the more he felt the energy surge within him. Each word was a stepping stone toward bridging a divide that had long blocked his path. It wasn't just about securing funds anymore, it was about crafting a narrative that resonated with what had been born from his own struggles. His phone buzzed, interrupting the flow of ideas. It was a message from the businessman. "When can we meet again to discuss strategies?" Malik's heart quickened as he stared at the screen. This wasn't just a simple inquiry, it was an invitation to mold those initial sparks of respect into something tangible. Responding with a determined heart, Malik set up a meeting for later that week, marking it on the calendar with a bright red pen. But as excitement swelled, so did the realization that he was stepping into a tougher arena. He would have to navigate the intricacies of business negotiations, a realm far removed from wrenches and engines. Self-doubt slid in, uninvited, as he questioned his ability to articulate his vision and stand firm against potential compromises that could dilute his mission. Can I truly hold my ground when the stakes are high? As he prepared for this next chapter, Malik understood that the greatest challenge was yet to come. The thought haunted him but also fueled his fire, a fire he would need as he approached the crossroads of opportunity and compromise. With the dates circled, he tucked away his sketches and formulas, though the undercurrents of uncertainty still churned in his mind. Both exhilarating and intimidating, the path ahead promised to test him. Now it was time to face the undeniable truth. The walls he needed to dismantle were not only those around the workshop but also those within himself. Would he find clarity amidst chaos, or let fear dictate his decisions? As he glanced at the now empty workspace before him, Malik felt a shift both daunting yet empowering. The meeting loomed closer, and his mind wrestled with the stakes involved. Would he preserve his integrity in the business world, or allow the pressure to sway him? Malik's journey toward a new identity had taken root, but the battle for authenticity was about to escalate. Would he emerge as the leader he envisioned, or would the shadows of self-doubt shackle him once more? As the meeting date approached, Malik felt a storm of tension tightening around him. The garage, his sanctuary, had transformed into a crucible of anxiety and anticipation. Each unfinished project stood as a mirror reflecting his inner turmoil. They taunted him with the unfinished dreams he had harbored for so long. But among the looming uncertainty, one thing was clear: he had to sharpen his argument, solidify his vision, and prepare for confrontation. He circled back to his proposal, now a living document filled with sketches of ideas and outlines of goals. The mentorship program was more than just a structure, it was the embodiment of his life's work and the answer to the fears that plagued him. What if I can't lead them? Echoed in his mind but were swiftly chased away by a louder, more determined chorus of what if I can. One late afternoon, he found himself perched in front of his laptop, an energy drink barely touched beside him. The flickering light from the screen painted shadows that danced in sync with his racing thoughts. He was familiar with engines but felt equally drawn into the machinery of negotiation, a system laden with complexities and guarded by powerful influences. Word by word, Malik crafted his approach for the meeting. He laid out the potential benefits of his program not just for himself but for the community, positioning his values as the key to overcoming the business world's cold calculations. He knew he had to define success differently, in terms of empowerment rather than profit margins alone. But as he drafted his proposal, self-doubt flickered ominously at the edges. What if they only see me as just a mechanic? He muttered, closing his eyes briefly. Images of meetings filled with suits flashed in his mind. He felt like a misfit in an elaborate game he had never asked to play. It forced him to pause, to question whether he was really ready to assume the mantle of leadership. Yet, in the quiet that enveloped him, a realization dawned: it was those very moments of doubt that shaped ambition. He had been underestimated in life, in every facet, at the auto shop, in schools, and even with family. The businessman's interest had lit a spark, but it was Malik himself who needed to fuel the flame. With renewed purpose, he clicked save on his proposal. His pitch would highlight not just his vision but the profound experience he had gained as a self-taught mechanic, the struggles he overcame, and most importantly, how he intended to pass those lessons on. Suddenly, it wasn't about what others saw in him, it was about what he could build for himself and those like him. The night before the meeting, nerves simmered as he paced back and forth, practicing his words, imagining the faced expressions he'd encounter. His reflection in the garage's dimly lit window showed a man who was simultaneously anxious and ready. Beneath the pressure, a flicker of determination grew into a steady flame. Tomorrow, I'll show them, he whispered to himself, trying to ground his soaring thoughts. He could almost feel the weight of judgment from those who dismissed him as just a mechanic, but he had resolved, no longer would he be siloed as a label. This was his opportunity to redefine not just his career but his identity. As he tucked into bed, he contemplated the road ahead, each twist and turn a potential obstacle or a stepping stone. Would he walk away empowered, or would complacency seep back in? This moment felt pivotal, buzzing with promise and tension. The door to a new identity was about to swing wide, but would he be bold enough to step through? The very essence of who he was had been crystallizing into focus, and as Malik drifted off to sleep, the weight of expectation settled comfortably upon his shoulders. With dawn approaching, he was about to face not only a meeting but the critical threshold of embracing his true self. Would the meeting reflect the man he was becoming, or would it expose the fears he was working to unravel? Morning light spilled into the garage, transforming the shadows of the previous night into a stark clarity. Malik awoke with a sense of urgency pressing down on him, an electric tension that felt different from the anxious knots of yesterday. Today, he had a purpose beyond himself. Today was about potential. He slipped out of bed, each movement fueled by an adrenaline surge. The hours spent drafting his proposal had fortified him. He was no longer just a mechanic but an architect of change, ready to influence those who had doubted his vision. He pulled on a crisp shirt, folding the collar with care. It symbolized not just professionalism but a marker of the transformation he was pursuing. His morning routine flitted by in a blur as his mind raced. With every brushstroke of toothpaste and deliberate swirl of coffee, he reviewed his arguments, honing them until they sparkled with clarity. The air around him seemed charged, an unspoken promise that the energy of the day would align with the intensity within him. As he drove to the meeting, he felt the familiar rumble under the hood of his car, a reminder of the worlds he straddled: the grit of the garage and the polish of the boardroom. Each red light became a moment for reflection. What if he fumbled his words? What if his passion was dismissed? A knot tightened in his stomach, yet he reminded himself that risks were the essence of growth. The life he envisioned required stepping boldly into the unknown. Upon arrival, the lobby of the building felt cavernous, the high ceilings amplifying his apprehension. The space, with its sleek marble floors and glass walls, was a stark contrast to the grease-stained sanctuary he called home. For a fleeting moment, he felt his confidence deflating, the weight of doubt crowding at his periphery. But instead of retreating, he inhaled deeply, centering himself. Clenching and unclenching his fists, he reminded himself of the journey that had brought him here: the years spent mastering his craft, the late nights of study, and the aspirations that had bubbled from the depths of his being. The meeting room was lined with faces, some familiar and others distant, a sea of industry experts in sharp suits who had thrived on tradition. As he took his seat, he exchanged brief glances, measuring the skeptics and supporters alike. He couldn't let their misconceptions anchor him. They had come to hear his proposal, their assumptions about him held no real power. As he began speaking, the initial tremors of nervousness transformed into a steady rhythm. His words flowed, a blend of personal anecdotes and professional insight. He articulated the need for mentorship within the automotive industry, connecting the dots between skill development and empowerment like he was welding two pieces of metal. His passion ignited a spark of interest among some listeners, their expressions shifting from indifference to engagement. Yet, as he reached the crux of his presentation, he faced a question that struck at his foundation: why should we invest in your program over established brands? The query ricocheted across the room, accompanied by the knowing nod of a prominent board member. Malik paused, the moment expanding like a balloon ready to burst. Sweat trickled down his back as he weighed his answer, grappling with the enormity of their expectations. Reflexively, he tapped into the essence of his journey, the resilience born from being underestimated. What I can offer is not just a program, it's a pathway to disrupting the status quo, he asserted, allowing his voice to carry the weight of his conviction. I started with nothing but a passion for engines, and I've learned that the most powerful transformations come from those who are willing to forge their path. As his words settled into the faces before him, he felt the scales tipping. The tension was palpable, an electric charge. He could sense their uncertainty clashing with his burgeoning confidence, and in that instant, he realized the meeting was not just a business transaction, it was an ultimatum: either step fully into leadership, or risk fading back into obscurity. What would be the outcome of this confrontation? As he awaited their response, a new fear crept in. Would they dismiss his vision as fanciful, or would they see the potential to rewrite the narrative he fought so hard to redefine? The air thickened with anticipation, and he recognized, this was no longer just about a proposal. It was about his identity. Would they embrace his vision or reinforce his fears? Malik stood in the meeting room, a battleground where aspirations met skepticism. The tension crackled in the air, his heart pounding in time with the relentless questions swirling in his mind. He had poured his essence into this proposal, every word was stitched with sweat and driven by passion. The moment of truth lay before him. As he awaited their response, something shifted within him. He chose clarity over intimidation. No longer would he cower beneath their gaze. The success of a workshop isn't merely measured in revenue, it's gauged by the lives we change, Malik declared, his voice steady and resolute. Investing in mentorship will create a ripple effect, empowering others will transform this business landscape. He could see curiosity igniting among some of the skeptics, barriers beginning to crack. Malik embraced the moment, choosing to paint a picture of impact rather than profit. The boardroom morphed from a place of judgment into an arena of potential. Each question fueled his fire, breathing life into his vision. Imagine a generation of mechanics equipped not only with technical skills but with confidence, creativity, and the courage to innovate. As he spoke, his authenticity resonated on a level that surpassed mere financial numbers. The meeting morphed from an assessment of his proposal into a compelling narrative of common goals. The response was gradual. Heads nodded thoughtfully, facades softened, and one board member chimed in, "But how do we practically initiate this?" Malik seized the chance. He detailed step-by-step plans of outreach to local schools, partnerships with community colleges, and development workshops that encouraged hands-on learning. His voice, once trembling, held a confident cadence now. This was his arena. Yet doubt lingered like a shadow. Over time, he had never been taken seriously as a mechanic in an industry dominated by polished reputations. He reshaped the narrative around him. He was not just a vehicle for mechanical fixes, he had transformed into a lighthouse guiding aspiring mechanics toward their own successes. If we can unlock potential in our youth and provide a space for inclusive learning, it disrupts the typical expectations of our industry, he concluded passionately. The room fell silent as his words settled into the atmosphere, a collective digestion of everything he had laid before them. For a heartbeat, time suspended, Malik braced himself for the verdict. Had he successfully bridged the chasm between his humble beginnings and their lofty expectations? Then, slowly, a senior figure leaned forward, resting hands on the table. "You speak with conviction. I appreciate the sincerity you bring. Let's explore this further," he said, punctuating his words with an unexpected warmth that filled Malik with a profound sense of affirmation. That moment where skepticism morphed into interest felt like crossing an invisible threshold. Relief crashed over him like a tidal wave, the room erupted into a slew of discussions. Ideas erupted between board members, their enthusiasm synchronizing with Malik's vision. The exchange wasn't merely transactional, it felt organic, a collaborative birth of something greater than either side had anticipated. After the meeting, in the aftermath of exchanges and brainstorming sessions, Malik stepped outside into the sunlight, a weight lifted from his shoulders. The world glimmered differently, those moments of doubt that had haunted him dissipated like fog in the light. He stood taller, feeling grounded in newfound recognition. This was not merely a meeting of acceptance, it was an affirmation of his transformation. Malik had gone from being an underestimated mechanic to a recognized architect of aspirations, proving that talent transcended surface appearances. The future began to unfold before him, layered with possibilities. With every stride he took towards his garage, he envisioned the mechanics of tomorrow flourishing in an environment he had initially envisioned, a hub of creativity, resilience, and talent, shaped by the experiences of those like him. The realization surged through him, he was not only part of the narrative, he was now shaping it actively. When he arrived back at his garage, it was still as messy as he had left it, but it now held a sense of promise rather than chaos. It was the birthplace of possibilities. Grabbing his notebook, he began brainstorming ideas for recruitment, local partnerships, and mentorship structures that could yield meaningful change. He smiled, feeling a blend of excitement and empowerment flourish within him. The road ahead may be uncertain, but he had learned that true strength resided in being authentic and unyielding in the pursuit of one's vision. Malik was no longer confined by the external narratives others had imposed on him, he had emerged into a force of change, ready to disrupt the familiar. With clear intent, he sat down, pen in hand, ready to draft the next chapter of his story, one where he would mentor others, inspire pathfinders, and refuse to let anyone be sidelined by preconceived notions. Malik, the mechanic, had risen to Malik, the leader, and he was ready to embrace everything that came with that identity. The echoes of his journey resonated powerfully. The fire within had not only been ignited, but it had also illuminated the path for those following in his footsteps. This transformation was the triumph he had been battling for, one where he had finally conquered self-doubt and seized the power of his legacy. Now was the moment to build something extraordinary, so he dove back into that notebook with renewed fervor and commitment. His legacy awaited. Now, take this moment to reflect on Malik's story and your own journey. You need to subscribe now to the channel to tap into more extraordinary stories of personal triumph. Leave a like now to support such groundbreaking content that showcases achievement over adversity. Comment below with your thoughts on Malik's transformation or share your theories about what comes next. And remember, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to be inspired by the power of perseverance.